So firstly, the first question as we move forward into the report is going to go to Hakan. Hakan, as the author of this report, can you take us through some of the important aspects of the report? Why you did the report, the methodology used to construct it, why is it relevant, is it standard, and just explain how we got to the point of actually discussing this in the webinar today. Hakan.
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation, and the pleasure to meet you all here. Let me start with the report when we look into the landscape here, just to be clear, this methodology what we have developed in the last 2 decades is applied across the globe. Today, more than 200 mobile networks in more than 120 countries are being evaluated by our unique methodology called the Umlaut score. It allows a technical analysis and enables comparisons between the networks and also the capabilities of each mobile network. Usually the benchmarks are helping operators to see the progress in their rollout activities or demonstrate how well they are delivering wireless connections to their consumers, or are being used for closing gaps, doing network optimization. That's the main use cases for our methodology. When we look a bit deeper into this on the next slide, then our score is always ending up in a unique figure. It is always 1,000 points. Whatever we do, it is always ending up with 1,000 points. And the methodology here is developed together with the industry. Right? It's very important that we engage on an annual basis with the whole industry, from New Zealand to Canada, between with a lot of operators, around 600 individuals working in an operator environment are engaged here. We exchange the information, what we are doing, how we're doing this, what are the thresholds, what are the metrics, the functions, the use cases, and what aspects we're considering in our score, and then publishing this usually every April, and having a stable framework for 12 months. That is, and this is, I think, one aspect why it is well perceived in the market and accepted as the let's say the industry standard. When we go a bit deeper, just to illustrate a bit that what is considered in our framework, we have use cases. It's on the next slide, reflecting user experience. When we look to the framework, we're assessing, for example, the voice mobile to mobile. We have the data services being reflected here with the web browsing, with the standard down uploads, having OTT voice, having gaming, having YouTube video, 4K video, which is also relevant, having interactive e-gaming as a use case, but also really looking into the coverage, also the quality of the coverage, the latency, which is also relevant for when you have low latency applications, but also looking to the reliability of a network, which is becoming more and more relevant in our world. We had challenging times in the last 2 years, and for sure the reliability of the connection was very, very important. Going a bit now deeper into the report, in our analysis, we compared the OpenRAN network of the 10 million inhabitant city of Tokyo with the network performance of other cosmopolitan cities all over the world, based on the unique Umlaut methodology, which is, as I mentioned here, applied in more than 120 countries. For a fair comparison, we selected the lowest and the highest achieved score of the mobile networks in each city to directly compare it with the Rakuten Mobile OpenRAN network in Tokyo. Here we have three main KPIs being considered. We looked into the coverage, and when I talk about coverage, is really the quality of the coverage, really having it indoor, outdoor. We assess this every 80 meters in the city with our unique capabilities. Regarding the speeds, for sure here, it is always important what is the consistent speed everywhere, which is more important than peak speeds at hotspots. Therefore, we assess the minimum performance the operators delivering in these cities, the average and the maximum, to get a consistent picture and reflecting all the users. Where basic internet is relevant, HD video or Ultra HD video, how this can be seen in the cities. Latency was another metric here. How many of the latency samples being executed on devices are good enough for OTT voice or for e-gaming, where different thresholds have been applied. And when you look to the results here, you see that Tokyo, with a score of 945 points, is competitive with the best operators in the other cities, like in Atlanta, in Berlin, Johannesburg, London, and Mexico City, in Milano, New York, Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, Rome, Sao Paulo, Seattle, Sydney, and Zurich. You see their operators being slightly ahead of the Tokyo performance, score gap of around 5 to 10 points. But you see that from our perspective, the OpenRAN solution we have seen in Tokyo is competitive to the leading mobile networks. That's the overall score. We will look to the different metrics on the next slide. You can see the first metric, which is the coverage, and here the maximum score in this 1000 points for the coverage is 500, and you see that the coverage is almost everywhere. 498 score means you have full coverage in the city, and this is, I think, well perceived by users. When we look to the other cities, also here in Seattle, in New York, Milan, and in Atlanta, we have a competitive situation here with the leading operators. When we look to Sao Paulo, for example, 466 means there's some way to go. It might be here that the indoor coverage is concerned, but we can see in Tokyo, almost everywhere, we can see the Rakuten coverage. When we look to the next metric, which is then the speed. Here, to remind you what I said in the beginning, in our scoring, we are weighting the minimum performance, which means the 10% lowest performance higher than the max speeds. Why? Because the ones being slow, the slow performing areas are the ones which are annoying. Therefore, we look into this and scoring them higher than the average ones, and then the highest speeds are scored. And when we sum up here, we see that the Tokyo performance of Rakuten is competitive with the performance of the other leading operators across the cities, with 274. And when I look at I think is some way to close the gap, maybe to achieve that at 300 dots, but it is a very good result, and it is competitive with what we have seen in the other leading networks in the selected cities. Coming to the last metric here for the report, it's the latency, and here we can see that the latency performance of Rakuten in Tokyo is good, but when we compare this with the leading operators in the other cities, it's a bit behind, and that's for sure something to highlight here. Um, there is something room for improvement to the leading networks worldwide. When I look back, we're doing this assessment here every month, then I see a positive trend with all the operators worldwide that the latency uh, um, is improving. Here, the guidance for sure would be work on closing the gap. We're talking about around 10 to 15 points. Here, for sure, the maturity of the technology, when it has become more and more mature, then for sure this metric will also improve from month to month. Then coming to a picture on the next slide, where, when we look to the global scoring, and that's here a map showing globally the networks we are assessing. And when we look where this network, the Rakuten network in Tokyo would be positioned, then we see them in the top 10%. When this can be applied nationwide, then this network would be in the top 10% of our global scoring view, which we generate every month. And every month we are looking into this and checking the network performance. And with this Tokyo performance, they would be in the top 10%. That's the results. Just to highlight a bit the performance here. We see a competitive performance also in the country. There will be maybe a question popping up. We see here definitely the parity with the local competition as well. It is a very competitive market in Japan, and we see only operators on almost the same performance. Just to highlight as well. Good. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Hakan, and thanks for the introduction. We can see from there it's a very conclusive report covering every single aspect. You mentioned it's covering indoor, it's covering outdoors, and it's not just covering the high density areas. So it's brilliant news and what we're seeing for Rakuten moving forward here. Sharad, question now really to you. Could you please just explain to me really the journey of deployment of OpenRAN, the type of obstacles you've had, the challenges, but also then focusing on some of the success criteria you've had, which has gone into producing this excellent report?
Sure, Paul. First of all, thanks and then welcome everyone. Good day, everyone, and konnichiwa to Japan people. So before I start on ORAN, just to give you background, Rakuten Group has 70 plus businesses and 1.6 billion members across the world. And why I'm highlighting is Rakuten is internet-based tech company, be it in fintech or e-commerce or our reward points. It's highly internet-focused company. Coming to mobile, we started MVNO service in 2014. And for MNO business, we got Spectrum in 2018. That was the time we had to make technology choice, and entering as challenger in a mature market like Japan, the important key considerations were cost, because we wanted to lower our total TCO. Second important thing was project speed, because we had to cover Japan. Japan is not small. Third was we had to be at par at incumbents in terms of network performance. And last not the least, to be future ready in terms of 5G and 6G. So post several discussions and risk assessment with management, and that time considering the geopolitical situation also, we discussed this with management and including Mickey, and we took this challenge to deploy fully virtualized OpenRAN system in Japan. During this journey, initially we faced many challenges, and I remember in early days, in early 2019, we used to do daily software upgrades, and in fact, in few days, multiple times. And for people who are aware about RAN software, doing this in any traditional network is almost impossible. And we found many issues, but we quickly realized that as long as it is software, it is fixable. In that time, there were no playbooks as such. We were in complete CI/CD cycle all the time. So what helped us during that time was Rakuten values. Rakuten means optimism. The team that we have in Japan, diverse team, and software-centric approach. These were the three key things that helped us achieve what we achieved so far. We launched our phase 1 network, which is Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya in April 2020. And for rest of the Japan, we partnered with KDDI. So where are we in terms of this cost considerations today? We were able to save significantly on 30 to 40%, and this is not my analysis, this is third-party analysis, with disaggregation of radio and traditional baseband. We were able to get to, by doing this, we were able to get to component level of costing, be it our radio head, be it our COT server, be it our small cells. We actually went to BOM level pricing, which is again not possible if we had to build traditional network, because that's a complete box. Second thing, what we achieved is speed. By having the agility and by doing this disaggregation, disaggregation, the DU goes to the data center. So all that goes to the site is just the antenna and RRH. This gave us a lot of flexibility. It was very site acquisition was comparatively very easy, especially in Tokyo, where we had to go to rooftop because the amount of equipment at site is very less, and also it gives us ease of deployment. This can be carried simply just the antenna and RRH instead of having big boxes. So by that, today we have achieved more than, as of April, more than 270,000 cells across Japan. This puts us 4 years ahead of our initial plan, but we had planned in 2018, and we wanted to cover 97-98%. Today we have already achieved 97%. In terms of network performance, I think Haken already explained that it is considering it's just an infant network, couple of years old. In terms of performance, we are at par in Japan and across global. The point that Hakan was highlighting about the pan-Japan, so we are using same architecture. Of course, the site density will be lesser as we go to suburban areas as compared to Tokyo, where intersite distance is 150 meters, but in terms of architecture, it's same across Japan. And the last thing about the flexibility that the cloud native or virtualized network gives us, that ease of migration to new technology. So today we are launching 5G. We got another spectrum, and using the same antenna, same RRH, same BU, we are able to upgrade to 5G. So we achieved the 4 key considerations.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharad. Hakan, we're obviously just still focusing on the details of the report. Rakuten Symphony was 920 last year, and it's achieved 945, which was the outstanding mark. What must its focus be in the next 12 months from your perspective to how do they get to outstanding? How do we get to be not just in the top 10%, but the top 3% of the world?
Let me first say how powerful these results are. I think after now 1 or 2 years of strong deployment, we see that OpenRAN is taking their first steps, and Rakuten Mobile here just proves it can achieve the same results as traditional RAN vendors. That's definitely something I would like to highlight here. When you ask me what has to be done, I think 945 is definitely a very, very strong score already. When we look to the matrix, what has to be done to maybe have a higher score? I think working, just continuing improving the software, which is usually then becoming more reliable. The network will be more reliable, and also we will get more consistent throughput. We will have consistent speech quality. We will get higher success rates, and this will ultimately end up in a higher score. And when you look into the regular work, then for sure the fine-tuning of the network. When we look into the data, we see still there are issues. They can be resolved. Then interference is something we can always improve. Systematic issues. You have sometimes these mute calls. We have a call established, but there's a mute call. These kind of things can be definitely improved. And when you look to video, the ISP peering to have interruption-free video is also becoming relevant. It's not only the RAN network or the core, it's also the rest in the chain. You have to improve to have an outstanding result. And the easiest way, from my perspective, to do that is just looking to the 10% lowest performing cells, the 10% slowest samples, the 10% with the speech quality being really low. And if you improve them, automatically the scores will go up. That would be my guidance here and my proposal.
No, I think that's excellent. Sharad, now just going back to the actual statistics which was brought up by Hakan in the report, there's probably not much we can say about coverage at 498 out of 500. That's pretty fantastic. So, credit to you and all the team there in Japan. But if we focus a little bit on speed, 274 is obviously still very good out of 300. But latency potentially is a little bit of room for improvement there. 174 out of 200. Can you explain what the next steps are to obviously improve the speed and the latency? Do you agree with the advice given by Hakan then? It's about the focus on the data, the focus on the quality, and not just looking at the big picture, but getting down to the detail?
Sure. So let me touch upon, each of the point. Coverage is 498, but still we are not satisfied. We are still expanding and densifying our network, especially in Tokyo and dense urban areas. Second thing is in terms of speed, we are doing we had this 20 megahertz, but there are still areas where we had to operate in 5 megahertz because of equipment issue or because of interference issue. So towards end of this year, everything will be upgraded to 20 megahertz, which is 5 megahertz as of now. Third thing is, as I explained, we had roaming partner, KDDI, which uses in some areas 10 megahertz, in some area 5 megahertz for roaming. So once our customers migrate to Rakuten network, they'll be able to enjoy 20 megahertz. Specifically in terms of latency, we know, latency is, we are working in multi-domain here. So as Hakan mentioned, transport network optimization is one of the key. When we started, there are sites or there are areas where we don't have our own fiber. So we had to lease the bandwidth. So we are migrating to our own fiber. That's on the transport network optimization. We are doing a lot of TCP optimization, which will yield better latency. And third, we are building a lot of regional data centers and partnering with the various content providers. Some of them were not ready initially because the traffic was low, but now we are directly doing either the direct peering or caching on these regional data centers. So that will enhance latency, in a big way. And the biggest gain that we'll get from, is from our next RAN upgrade, where we are implementing new features like pre-scheduling and optimizing the SR periodicity. This is all on 4G. And of course, with the focus on 5G, this will further enhance the latency. And many of these are already done. So I'm sure by next report, you'll see much improvement.
So how can we're saying there we're going to get to the outstanding map for next year? We're quite confident with this strategy going forward, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Okay, one of the things I'd like to explore now, just coming off a little bit from the actual dynamics of the report, but what I'd like to look into is how automation and AI is basically help rolling out a network, helping understanding the network and the dynamics. Hakan, from the independent perspective from Umlaut, how in your perception does automation and AI significantly help an operator to understand his landscape better?
I think AI can definitely help to spend less effort in the environment. AI can help operators to accelerate in many regards. One is, for example, problem detection or problem solving, reducing human errors in the network management, reducing the time to resolve network issues, performance regulations. And I can give an example, a very basic one. In the data we are post-processing here, we can detect issues, outages. We can detect cross feeders. You should usually not have cross feeders, but you detect them and solve them. And detection, when you do this with automation, you spend less time. And some of the solutions we have seen are well covering this already. You can, for example, do auto installations of cloud components, the CU, DU, and also the auto commissioning is also something, or the auto provisioning can just help to accelerate the rollout. Here, Sharon said, planning to massively invest into the rollout, and automation can definitely help. And each and every node you can manage better with the automation, and for sure, when everything goes to cloud, the management of the system is also easier when you do automation. That's definitely something we see as a key to improve the problem solving, but also the management of the system.
Excellent. Sharad, give me some examples, please, of how you guys at Rakuten have basically used automation and used AI to basically deliver the network moving forward.
So, Paul, let me put it like in three ways. First is the project phase, right? When you are building the network. So, while building the network, you need a lot of automation to reduce the manual effort. So, I think we have achieved the target, and today we are integrating 500 plus sites without any manual intervention. So it's all automated, like Wi-Fi, or how someone installs AP at home. So in terms of project, yes, we are done. Second is operational efficiency. OpenRAN is good, but the secret sauce about OpenRAN is mixing it and enhancing it with automation. So especially when it comes to operations, in order to increase availability, right? It's a network. The box will go, the hardware will get faulty. How can we do auto healing, auto switchover? That's the operational efficiency. Today, we are, in terms of operations, we are able to upgrade entire network in one night. So that brings in a lot of efficiency. Secondly, on the healing, so when hardware goes faulty, how quickly, within a second or 2 seconds or minute or hours, how long does it take to repair the site? So that's where, for example, in our case, we have a spare hardware at our data centers where DU or CU workload is there. And in case of any hardware fault, it automatically switches, which is again very difficult to achieve in traditional network. And third thing is when it comes to performance. So performance is where AI will help. So predictive analysis of failures, or we have a single SON layer across this network where we have deployed these mix of different solutions, be it macro, mini macro, indoor small cells, femtos. So it's a complete network, and keep in mind it is a only single band network. In order to operate a single band network, we need centralized SON system. So advanced features like MSIM and dynamic remote electrical tilt management, dynamic CCO. These are the key features enabled with AI, which are helping us on performance improvement. And now we are at the advanced stage of developing our own rig, where we have already integrated many anomaly detection algorithms and so on and so forth. So every engineer in Rakuten, especially in network team, is a software engineering, and they are always thinking about how to automate or how to use AI.
Yeah. So we can safely say that the only way to succeed and get better is by introducing more automation, more innovation, and using AI is definitely going to be the way to let's get to that outstanding mark moving forward. Sharad, just going back a little bit to the beginning of, let's say, we have touched on it a little bit, but let's just focus on, we've covered one of the densest areas in the world in terms to sort of like, OpenRAN solutions. And a lot of people said it's not going to be possible to do that. You've touched on the software, you've touched on the automation, but is there any sort of like some other insights you can share with the people on this webinar about why it made sense for Rakuten Mobile to go forward with ORAN, and why have we just got such good high quality?
Okay. I started with that. Rakuten means optimism, and Rakuten is an internet company. So for let's say if you talk about any traditional operator, for them to go to OpenRAN, especially the management, and to adopt to this automation and AI and building a network by themselves, it's generally not done. So what those days when we started, there was a myth that OpenRAN will never work in dense environment, but we believed in it, and there is no end of the day, it's RAN software. It's just disaggregated and centralized. It's the same 3GPP protocols which are working. So it was we have defunct both on 4G and 5G front. Also on 5G front, it was said that massive MIMO will not work with OpenRAN in dense environment. And today we are achieving one of the best KPIs with our 5G massive MIMO network. So going back, once Nokia agreed to open the interface, there was no going back to any other technology. We just believed in it and got it done.
Fantastic. Now, we're speaking about OpenRAN here, but always just from the view of the operator. The Umlaut report is focused on the operators. Sharad was speaking about the operators, but what is the benefit for the end customer? Who will ultimately benefit from this moving forward? And it's the question for you both. So Sharad, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, Paul, that's a very good question. So to be honest, end customer, they don't care what technology is deployed. All that they care is what is your network availability. So it has to be 100%. How is coverage, quality, and for some, it matters what is the cost. So basically availability, coverage, quality, and cost. This is what customer looks for. In terms of OpenRAN, how it can give advantage to end customer is they can basically enjoy great quality, high availability at affordable manner. So whatever we saved on the TCO, we can pass it on to our customer. And that's what we did in Japan.
Fantastic. Now, just a message to all of the audience. We are going to be going into a Q&A session. So please submit your questions. If you've got any specific questions for Sharad or Hakan, or indeed both of them. So we'll be going into some questions shortly. But Hakan, your views really on, because you're also a customer at the end of the day, we're all customers. So what's the benefit of end customers and ORAN from your perspective?
I think the demand I see here is not OpenRAN specific, is relevant for all the technologies. I think what Sharad said here is the reliability of the network, that you are always connected, is very important. Being in mobility, being at home, then there are customers having less demands than others, then that this minimum performance the customer demand has is just fulfilled. It is for maybe a vending machine with an IT device different from an end customer being at home with 3 kids doing TV in parallel. That the demand is fulfilled, and for sure when it comes to the industries, that the technology is delivering the features and and being interoperable with what the demand is, in, for example, for the enterprise business, also for the industries. Not only humans are being connected, also the machines. And I think here with OpenRAN, we can maybe speed up the development here, especially in the industry area, to fulfill the demand, especially for that customer group.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, we've just got one question coming from the audience right now. And Sharad, it's a question with you in respect to brownfield telcos. Obviously, there's been lots of talk about, where we was a greenfield operation, everything which we've done. But what would be your advice as the CTO moving forward to a brownfield telco who's looking to deploy OpenRAN architecture? Where should they start? Where should the conversation begin? Because I think there's a lot of people who don't know.
This is more a question for our Symphony folks, but from all the interaction that I'm having with Symphony and different CTOs or CEOs, in many countries, 5G is getting deployed, but there is no revenue generating use case as such, apart from increasing the speed or FWA. This means a significant investment, but no short-term gain. OpenRAN can lower the overall TCO and get 5G done. That is one of the approach for some of the markets. Then secondly, for markets where 4G is still getting deployed, and especially in developing countries, if they want to lower the TCO, if they want to get the pooling gain, they should go for OpenRAN. And remember, now even Rakuten Mobile is not no more greenfield. We are deploying second frequency. We are deploying 5G, both FR1, FR2. So it is a brownfield network in a way.
Wonderful. Another question as well is coming up in terms of cell deployment. You mentioned earlier on actually femtocells, small cells. What is your opinion on the right cells to use at the right time, and how should people understand this quite complex subject easier?
So it again depends on the environment. For a market like Tokyo, not everything can be covered by putting sites on rooftop or macro sites. We have to go indoor in order to cover it, and that's where we used indoor small cell. Then there are places in Tokyo like Shibuya, where there are small streets with thousands of people. No matter how many macros we put, it will not be able to meet the capacity requirement. So it's a combination of urban, suburban, dense urban, what you want to use. And also especially in Tokyo, a lot of cities built underground, and achieving underground coverage without using indoor small cells or femtos, it's not possible. So depending on the situation, but for example, for suburban areas or our rural areas, macros are good enough.
Excellent, thank you. And just a message to the audience, we're open for questions now, so please just keep submitting your questions to our panelists. Now, we've touched on a few different aspects of OpenRAN now. We've touched on it from the end user perspective, and we've looked at it from the Tokyo perspective. But what about OpenRAN in development, emerging markets, developing markets? Hakan, I know you've done some work on that with Umlaut, I believe. So what's your view on here about the OpenRAN approach in developing markets?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting question, where OpenRAN could become an alternative. And what we did, we just looked into the data we have, which is the same data where we're doing our performance analysis. And we looked into the data and checked where, for example, 5G is deployed already or not. This could be an indicator where an operator could then think about an alternative entering maybe OpenRAN. The second thing we did was looking into the 4G deployment, where maybe 4G deployment hasn't been finished and regional deployments has to be done. Even the 5G case where an operator started already and maybe half of the country is not yet covered. I think these are also candidates where OpenRAN could become an alternative. There are also cases like when you have countries where roaming is coming to play, where half of the country is delivered by your partner, you could most probably then improve maybe your TCO just with deploying your own network. These kind of things we analyze, but we know that each and every country and the specifics with the network operators are there. It could be that the interoperability between networks could become challenging. This you should have in your mind. Then for sure across the regions, when you select an OpenRAN vendor, then the delivery is something you should have in your mind. And just to show you a bit the number of networks we have selected so far, we see around 75 countries where OpenRAN could become relevant, just as maybe the maximum figure, and then the operators being in these countries have their individual view for sure for that. But we see that countries where 5G is not deployed, then the countries where you have to do an expansion to 4G and 5G just rationally, and for sure special cases where, for example, roaming is coming to play, or specific use cases, for example, for the enterprise business could also be relevant. But we see definitely OpenRAN as an alternative, and the technology we have seen so far in Japan is just showing it is competitive. It is possible.
Mm-hmm. Sharad, your views on deploying OpenRAN in the developing emerging markets, please.
See, I think personally, I think OpenRAN will happen, and it is bound to happen. There will be no 6G without OpenRAN. Now the question is whether you want to have different vendor providing the software and hardware. That's up to the operator choice. OpenRAN as technology will happen, and every tier 1 OEM will go for it, because just because of the technology and the way things are moving, especially towards 5G and 6G. It gives a lot of flexibility, and when we go to 6G or advanced beyond 5G, there are features which are which need open interfaces. In terms of developing markets, in some of the developing markets, for example, Japan is a fiber-rich country, so we had no issue in going and deploying 7.2 split of ORAN. But in some countries, half of the network runs on wireless backhaul, and it's very easy to go to a different split or even use satellite as backhaul, but still the interfaces are open. So operators will have all the flexibility. So it's developing or developed, I see no difference. It's about the operator's strategy. But as a technology, OpenRAN will happen.
Mm-hmm. But you mentioned there about obviously, fiber and using satellite. So do you see any advantages from how OpenRAN itself could be better for covering rural areas?
See, so what happens in traditional network is, for such cases, they bring in different vendor or different equipment. I'll give you, so we are also using in deep rural areas, we are also using satellite backhaul, because there is no fiber or wireless is not feasible in mountains or deep rural area. But our architecture is same. It's the same split that we are using. So as long as it's the same split, same OBF or same EMS, then you can do what any other split will do.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Hakan, a question has just come in from the audience here, wanting to know more about the actual study. Now, obviously, Rakuten Mobile was a full OpenRAN network, but they're actually specifically asking, were any of the operators in the study had OpenRAN network beside Rakuten Mobile?
I think we, just from the KPIs we are evaluating, we are not distinguish, or we're not differentiating between OpenRAN or not OpenRAN. We look always to user experience. The reasons why we highlighted this OpenRAN, we knew about the press and also the deployment plans of Rakuten to the press, and then we just did the analysis and concluded on OpenRAN. We don't have insights just from the public information who else has OpenRAN deployed and where. What I can say is the areas we have assessed in Japan have equal performance with the other environments they have, whatever it is. Now, my impression was it is more traditional and conventional way of deployment, just from, but we don't have the fingerprint yet in our data to say that's OpenRAN. That's not something we can detect it because it's all about standards. And we just highlighted the report as the OpenRAN because the Rakuten one was highlighted in the marketplace, and everyone was talking about OpenRAN and Rakuten, and then we said, okay, then let's look into this and see, is it working? That was the main reason behind our initiative.
Yeah, which I think is a fantastic comment, because it really shows that what Rakuten Mobile did with OpenRAN technology was put it on parity with any network in the world, and this is, it's actually truly shown that. Now, I've got a question for myself, which is coming in from the consumer perspective. We speak coverage, we speak speed, we speak latency, but as the consumer on the street, most of them will probably think, I just want speed. They don't really probably understand some of the dynamics to that, but latency is obviously a key aspect. So why, and coverage, I think, but why is latency particularly important moving forward? Sharad just touched on 5G, and then the conversations are already starting about 6G, but why is latency one of the key things people truly need to understand for consumer products and services? Where will that play a part? Sharad first, then Hakan.
Okay, so latency, you rightly said, normal subscriber will not understand the difference between throughput and speed or latency. But latency is vital to a good experience when gaming online in 4G world, right? Online gaming, especially in fast-paced games like Fortnite or Overwatch, high latency manifests as lag, and can lead to significant delays between what you are inputting and by the time your character's action. So online gaming is one key area for latency. You can be already dead while you are still trying to get off a shot if latency is high.
Excellent.
As I see, that is from mobile handset perspective. But as I see, going forward, things like connected cars will require stringent latency. Things like remote surgery, and we are already doing some of these trials on our 5G network. So remote surgery, automated manufacturing via robots, they will be very stringent in terms of latency requirement. Controlling drones, for example, for delivery, or when thousands of drones are in sky, latency will become very important. So these are the key applications. But there is, apart from online gaming today, on the handset, there is no killing app that requires very stringent latency of 1 millisecond, for example.
Yeah, true. I think that's a valid point. We'll see much more growth in the enterprise area and the amount of use cases with IoT and enterprise services. Hakan, any thoughts on the value of latency yourself?
Sure. I think the low latency especially could be maybe the enabler for one of the challenges 5G has, is getting the investments materialized, because you're investing a lot and you have to get your money back. And when you enable and you have low latency, then you are more attractive also for other customer types. And here Sharad touched a bit on the self-driving cars, the IoT sensor business, but also a lot of other critical communication could be managed by the mobile network, which is then automatically enabling someone in sales to sell network resources. I think this can be definitely an enabler for the future. The low latency, the real use cases at the moment I see definitely in the automotive space, the aerospace industry, healthcare, and there's a new highlight popping up. It's the metaverse, virtual reality, the virtual talking to your teacher in a virtual room. If this is really done in real time, it is definitely something disruptive. But many more will pop up, and it can be helpful to get the investments materialized, to get also the income for the people building the network. It's the telecom industry.
Wonderful. Right, we've just got time probably for one more question, which has just come through. I think we've got about 5 minutes left. Sharad, a question has come through from the audience here, and I'll read it. So, OpenRAN does introduce operational overheads, as you are now dealing with a high number of configurations and having to treat multiple fault scenarios. How can an operator manage this challenge from a managed services perspective?
Very good question, actually. Telecom traditional networks have been built the way it was 20 years back. Now, if you look at hyperscalers, someone else is providing hardware, someone else is providing the platform. App owner is running the network without managed services. Why do we need managed services? We need to change to cloud native network, that mentality that everything is manageable and can be healed automatically. So think about Netflix, how they are running their operations. Hardly any people sitting in Netflix, and it runs on different cloud, different hardware. That's where telecom has to go. As we increase number of, we go towards 5G or 6G, our base stations or site count will drastically increase. If today's city is covered with 100, 5G it will be 500, and maybe 6G it will be 1000. So this number is not linear, it's exponential. And in order to manage all these network elements, we have to think cloud native way, how hyperscalers are thinking.
I think that's a fantastic point.
But having said that, it's a mindset. Yeah, you need to have software people running the telecom network, not telecom engineers running the telecom network.
Yeah, so it's a mind shift change. It's an organizational change. You need to start thinking from a software first methodology is what we would say going forward here.
Right.
Now, that's probably coming up to the end of the questionnaire. So I'd like to basically thank you, gentlemen, for the time spent here. What I would actually like to say, Sharad, is looking forward, looking towards 2023. What is your top goals to, to conclude the year of 2022, but going forward into 23? And how are they going to contribute to the success of Rakuten Mobile?
Well, the first one is basic, that we still need to cover 100% of Japan. And we are at, as I said, we are at 97% population coverage, but that doesn't mean 97% area coverage. So for that, what we are trying to do is, as some of you may know, that we invested in AST, which is a satellite company. And this summer we'll be doing the first trial and sending the satellite in space. And next year probably we'll be doing the trial here. So that is in terms of coverage. We have to achieve 100% coverage in, not in 2023, but soon, right? Same time we have to do 5G expansion. That is basics. And then we continue to do further cloudification using our own SIM cloud. So some of the workloads that we have are still virtualized, and we have to go to Kubernetes. And third, not in terms of network as such, but one more on network is we are implementing on transport. We don't talk much about, or we never spoke about transport network. but we have a very unique flat architecture transport network which runs in terabytes, and this year we'll be implementing SRv6, which is the segment routing on transmission side. And finally, in terms of customer, we have to focus on our enterprise and business customers.
Wonderful. Well, firstly, thank you, gentlemen, but also actually thank you to all the audience for participating in this webinar, and thank you to everybody for sharing questions. Now, any questions I've not been able to get through today, rest assured we will look at those questions and we will get back to you. So firstly, Hakan, thank you for the work done on the Umlaut report. It's fantastic to see such detail across all the operators, and fantastic to see where Rakuten Mobile is there. Sharad, thank you very much for your time today and sharing your insights. And everybody, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.